But what's our first goal? Is our first goal so that people can live happy, healthy, prosperous lives? I hope so. That's what conservatives want. And if other people have more wealth, is that somehow inherently bad? No, of course not. But the question is, are people able to live their lives as they wish? Are people prosperous and healthy? And is society cohesive? We can eventually get to questions of wealth gap, and there are certain structural impediments that we can address. But to focus first on a wealth gap ignores the far more important question about whether people are free and prosperous and healthy on their own.
Dan Schneider, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you.
And of course, we're doing the fist pumps because, you know, there is a coronavirus out there. We want to do a little modeling for the audiences here. So, well, America versus socialism, that's the theme of the conference.
Right.
You know, you're ostensibly the guy putting it on, of course not alone.
No, I've got a great team.
That's right. And so, well, tell me a bit, why this theme this year?
You know, it's been amazing. So many young people, especially in America, have been lulled into believing that socialism is somehow a good thing, that socialism somehow helps people and we can all be prosperous and free and be happy under a socialist regime. And then they gloss it up with putting an adjective in front of it, democratic socialism, somehow believing that if you put that D word in front of it, it makes it all nice. Socialism destroys humanity. Socialism wrecks societies. It has never worked, it cannot work. It is an authoritarian, ugly system that robs people of everything they are. And now we've got all these people in America who somehow think otherwise. So we've got to help people understand what we're really dealing with.
Well, that's interesting because I had Morgan Zegers on actually very appropriately as kind of the inaugural interview that we had here. And she mentioned that she believes that a lot of young people just simply don't understand what it really means. It's been kind of redefined in the popular consciousness to something quite different than what you just described.
Right. Yeah, when we describe socialism, those on the left will immediately scoff at us and say, oh, you're silly, you don't understand, we're not talking about socialism, we're talking about democratic socialism. That's as far as they go. They might add one more thing. What we're talking about is the sort of the Norwegian socialism or something like that.
Okay.
They have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know that those are just, it's wordplay. Socialism is a system where the elites get to decide how everybody else is going to live their lives. The elites get to decide what you are allowed to keep and what you are not allowed to keep. Now they put the word democratic in front of it. All that means is that the thug who takes over first gets support from a substantial portion of a population, but then that thug controls everything. It cannot work otherwise. So socialism is a bad, corrupt system. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it actually worked the way the left said it would work, where we could all have daisies growing in our front yards? That's not the way it is. We've got to fight for a system where people can live freely, where people can live their lives as they wish, in a society where there are rules, because of course there are bad people everywhere, so we have to make sure that there are rules in place that protect us from bad people. But people need to be able to live their lives freely. That's the best system that we can ever hope for.
You know, I guess the sort of argument, that a lot of very well-meaning people who advocate for strong social safety nets, which I think, in a lot of people's minds fits into this area. The feeling is, or perhaps the talking points are that a lot of people are just kind of left out of being able to benefit from what this country has to offer, and that's wrong. And we need to change the system to help them, basically be able to succeed, because they're just kind of they're not able to participate in, let's call it the American dream, right? How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, having a safety net is not socialism.
Okay.
Having a safety net is called social programs. Now, I used to oversee many of the nation's welfare programs in the Bush administration. and I would execute the law as I was required to. But what people need to understand is most of these social service programs are not actually designed to alleviate poverty. If you want to alleviate poverty, you need to have programs that help people become successful on their own. Simply giving people welfare cash assistance, for the most part, does not help people become free. They do not help people become independent. Now, they may provide immediate resources so that people don't starve, so that people can make their rent payments. But those programs are not designed ultimately to help people become free and independent. So we do need to focus more on the kinds of things to help people become liberated from government, not tied to it.
I see. Okay, let me do another one, which is, I think, on a lot of people's minds, and actually I think reflected in the discussions in this election cycle, the wealth gap, right? You have this very, very small number of people that hold, I don't remember what the recent numbers are, but this gargantuan, portion of the wealth, and the bottom 30% or bottom, or is it? I can't remember the exact statistics, but there's this big wealth gap. That's just simply unfair. Is it fair? These people get the loopholes. They don't pay taxes.
This is a talking point of the left. I'm not saying that there aren't some policy issues that should be explored there, but what's our first goal? Is our first goal so that people can live happy, healthy, prosperous lives? I hope so. That's what conservatives want. And if other people have more wealth, is that somehow inherently bad? No, of course not. But the question is, are people able to live their lives as they wish? Are people prosperous and healthy? And is society cohesive? We can eventually get to questions of wealth gap, and there are certain structural impediments that we can address. But to focus first on a wealth gap ignores the far more important question about whether people are free and prosperous and healthy on their own.
So what do you hope this very large it's the biggest ever, right? Conference this year?
Yeah.
How big is it?
I keep on being asked this, and I should probably find out exactly how many tickets have been sold. It's the first time we've ever just completely sold out of all our tickets.
The last question I have is simply, if for a success for CPAC 2020, what would that look like?
I think success is that people in America, and for all of our followers abroad, that they really understand what is at stake, that the socialist threat is evil and it's real and it has to be stopped.
Dan Schneider, such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jan.